Hi, it's Irene Weinberg, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. Before we get started with the episode, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching so you never miss an episode. Every week, we share heartfelt stories, spiritual insights, and practical guidance to help you navigate grief and trauma, find hope, and discover rebirth after loss. By subscribing, you'll get access to every episode and join our supportive community on this journey. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I hope this message finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you today from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to welcome Rebecca Faye Smith Galli, known as Becky, whose life has been shaped by extraordinary loss and even more extraordinary resilience. Becky has faced the unimaginable, losing her teenage brother, raising 4 children, including 2 with significant special needs, saying goodbye to a son who passed after a degenerative illness, navigating the complexities of parenting a daughter with autism, enduring the end of her marriage, and then, just 9 days later, becoming paralyzed from transverse myelitis. Out of that cascade of heartbreak emerged a renewed sense of purpose, and Becky's grief became the spark for a writing career that now inspires thousands. Becky's first column for the Baltimore Sun came out in 2000, written from the wheelchair that became her new vantage point on life. Since then, she's published more than 400 columns, reflections, and essays that explore family, grief, resilience, and the everyday courage it takes to keep moving forward. Her memoir, Rethinking Possible, chronicles her journey through unimaginable change, and her newest book, Morning Fuel, offers daily inspiration to help readers start each day grounded, hopeful, and strong. Beyond her writing, Becky has been a fierce advocate for families navigating disability and chronic illness. She helped found Pathfinders for Autism, has served on multiple boards supporting individuals with disabilities, and continues to champion communities that shaped her own family story. A Moorhead Kane Scholar and former IBM Golden Circle Award recipient, Becky brings both heart and sharp insight to everything she does. I'm looking forward to talking with Becky, who's joining us from Lutherville, Maryland, about how losing her brother, her first and most shattering heartbreak, became the lens through which she understood every loss since. We'll explore the 2 guiding beliefs that have shaped every chapter of her life. Grief is a strange companion, and your journey through grief is as unique as your fingerprint. Dig into the source of her optimism, hear the single best advice she offers anyone facing hard times, and more for an uplifting, perspective-shifting, and honest conversation about what becomes possible after life breaks us open. Hi there, and welcome to the International Award-winning Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author, and trauma survivor, Irene Weinberg, here to support you wherever you are on your healing journey. Each week, I connect with leading grief and trauma experts, intuitive healers, mediums, and inspiring voices who share powerful stories of loss, resilience, and transformation. If you're searching for hope, meaning, and a path forward after loss or trauma, you're in the right place. Together, let's rediscover joy, healing, and the possibility of rebirth. Hello, Becky. A warm, heartfelt welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Hello, Irene. So very nice to have be here and be with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
So my pleasure. You're amazing. I mean, I have to honestly say, researching the interview, what you've been through and how you've gotten through it, and your attitude just it's mind-blowing and so uplifting. So I know you have a lot of wisdom to share with everyone tuning in. And so let's start with the unimaginable. Tell us about you've endured losing your brother, losing your son, navigating your daughter's needs, going through a divorce, and then facing sudden paralysis. When you look at the full arc of your story, how do you keep moving forward every day?
Well, that's a very good question, and I must admit there's some days that are easier than others and some days that are really difficult, but I've found that if you break things down into small units and just focus on the next thing to do, that's really helpful. But in general, I try to make sure I have things to look forward to in my life and people that I enjoy being around me. I think that it's very important to be honest about how you feel. And if today you wake up and it's not a great day, be very honest about that. Hey,
So you can say to people, hey, I'm not my best today.
yeah, my sister and I talk almost every day, and we kind of have a code like, how are you? Well, I'm okay. If okay means one thing, fine means another, great means something. And so you have a kind of a check in with yourself or someone else to be honest about how things are going and take it from there. Do what you need to keep moving.
Wow, it's amazing to me. You know, you've said your brother's death became the foundation for understanding every loss that followed. Could you share the core lessons from that first grief experience that have shaped how you navigated all these amazing things that happened afterwards with you?
Sure. I don't think I really realized the foundation that I had set for that until I wrote my first book, the memoir, and had to look back at how close our family was before my brother's death. He was 17, I was 20, my sister was 16. And, he was that kid, the kid that was president of Student Council Association, had great plans to be a lawyer, he was a musician, he was a athlete, all the things, all the plans, and, he was in a water skiing accident, wasn't looking where he was going, and he hit a pier and died 9 days later. So it was a shock for our family, and in many ways, we shattered. As I look back, we each handled our grief very differently. My father was a minister and could very publicly share his pain, and eventually became a noted lecturer on grief. My mom was much more private and found solace in support groups for parents who had lost children. I was in college, and my girlfriends helped move me along. I really relied on them to just keep me moving, but my sister was only 17 months younger than my brother, so it was a community loss for her. The whole community grieved the loss of my brother, and she wanted to be with him. So my parents had to get her special supports for that to help her move through her grief. So my lesson was we shattered, we all managed our grief differently, and that was okay. We each had different ways we got through it, but we got through it. We kept moving, and if one of us was stuck like my sister was in a thought that was not healthy, it's important to get support for that. So, that's where I think your grief is unique as your fingerprint came from, as well as your valley is your valley. That's kind of a something I learned later on was everybody handles grief differently, and some people can get through it a lot faster than others, and you wonder what's wrong with you that you can't go that quickly, but give yourself grace that you're at the pace you need to be as long as you're moving.
It's so true. And you often say grief is a strange companion.
Yes, that one is just because it hits you so differently and unpredictably. You can be in a certain environment and a certain smell or a certain scene evokes this grief that comes on you really strongly. And I used to like, oh my gosh, here I'm going to cry again because I saw a butterfly and it reminds me of my brother and that whole loss thing. And then after time, I learned to really respect it and to give it a place in my life where it's like you grieve deeply because you've loved
That's
deeply.
right.
And if that grief coming, kind of welcome it, like, okay, you can have this part of my life sit right here for a little bit and I'll remember the things. And I try to remember it with love being greater than the loss, then so the loss isn't what pulls me down, but remembering the good things about that experience and before the loss. So it's a strange companion, but one that I've learned to respect and actually welcome in its own way as a reminder of, yeah, I really loved my brother.
And if you
And
close the door on that grief, would you agree? That's gonna pop up in other ways in your life. That's gonna be unresolved emotions, so, like, better to help yourself to move forward through that, but a lot of times we need help and support.
yes. And one of the things, the images I have, my dad said, you can put things on a peg, where you don't have to have them in the center of your life. You can put them on a peg. Well, I expanded it a little bit and I have shelves in my life where I'll put my thinking about my brother or my son or my mom or my paralysis or these different losses have places up there where I put them gently and with love and respect. But when they come to visit me, I move through them, but I try to give them time limits on how long I'm going to obsess. Like, I'll obsess for you for an hour or whatever and put it back on the shelf gently and know that they're just part of who I am. They're not compartments with locks and keys, they're on open shelves.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And your father, who was this pastor who you love so much and you quote often, is there a particular saying of his that you return to most of the time?
I love when he said, "Don't cut what you can unravel." And I
Oh, I
really
like that.
that gives you patience, I think, to just take a breath here, before I make a quick decision, think it through, give it time to kind of, unfold as it should, and that one I really like a lot.
That's beautiful. And I wanna know also, despite everything you've lived through, and I know you have your ups and downs and ins and outs, but what would you say one thing is the source of your optimism?
I think it has to go back. I was raised in a family of faith, and I think that their faith, and I made my profession of faith when I was 6 years old, but as I say often, I've been in a relationship with God since I was 6 years old, but not always on speaking terms,
I
So,
love that.
because there have been times I have been so angry that I just couldn't. I shut down and I would have to rely on others whose faith was stronger, belief was stronger, that kind of get me through times where I was really struggling. But I also think that anger is something that it's one of those things that we don't talk about that much, but after a loss, there's usually some kind of anger. And to be honest, I was angry at my brother that he wasn't looking where he was going. But I'm more angry that he left me to miss him for the rest of my life, very self-centered kind of thing, but if you're honest about it, then you can deal with it, and you're right, it doesn't pop up in other ways that you don't mean for it to be. So
Absolutely. I think that a lot of times, that anger also springs from a sense of what you just said, abandonment. You feel like the person has left you behind, which is really I mean, I remember crying like crazy, feeling that way with my husband. I think it's very natural. Um, when life gets heavy, what helps you face those difficult moments? Is it your sense of community? I mean, if you could offer one essential piece of advice for someone going through hard times, and I would bet anything that there are people listening to this who are going through very hard times, what would your advice be to them?
well, my first advice is always be honest about your how you're feeling and your capacity to deal with it. And then the second piece of that is who is in your boat? Who are your resources to help you get through you either emotionally, how you're feeling about something, or your capacity to deal with it, experts that can help you move through it. And every time that we experience a loss or a challenge, those two things, how do I feel about it? What's my capacity to deal with it? And who are your resources that you're putting together to help you move through it are critical. I think those are the two pieces. And then the other is keep moving. Don't isolate. Make sure that you have some kind of motion in your life, even if it's treading water. If you're treading, you're still moving. You might be processing things. And there's a difference between restoration time and isolation time. And you have to be very mindful of that because isolation isn't good. You can spiral down really quickly. Restoration, you're still treading water. You're still nurturing yourself to get to a healthier place.
That's great advice. And I want to talk to you now about your new book, Morning Fuel, which offers daily inspiration. Now everyone's heard how inspiring Becky is. Her new book, Morning Fuel, offers inspiration. Why do you believe starting the day fueled is so important? And how did you choose the stories and quotes for the book? And do you have an entry that's especially meaningful for you?
Sure, absolutely. So the Morning Fuel came about because when I wrote my memoir, Rethinking Possible, I got a lot of that question. How do you keep going? What tips or techniques do you have for keeping going? And it's my practice to every morning read some daily readers. I have about 6 or 7 I choose from, and those little stories just kind of jumpstart my mind in the morning. And so I thought, why don't I write what I read? And so I had many columns that I'd already written. My dad was a columnist as well. And so I selected some of these columns and then added others. And the framework that I used was do these stories either inspire, encourage, or make you think? And that's the lens I looked through when I selected these stories. And then at the end, I offer a couple reflection questions so that you can think more of how to apply kind of the theme of that story to what's going on with you.
You started the morning with inspiration.
I do. I try to do it every day. And then
Is
you'd
there a
ask,
particular entry you'd like to read to us?
yes. So this is,
It's very inspiring.
oh, well, thank you. So this one's called the Milkshake Method. It was 9:15 on a Saturday night. I knew if I wanted to talk to mom and dad, I'd need to make my call right then or I would not make their bedtime curfew. Mom answered the phone on the first ring. Dad joined in the conversation. They asked about my dinner party that was in progress. How's so and so? They asked. Tell her I said hello. They loved plugging into my world. And how's your ice cream, Dad? Inquired next. During their last visit, I had purchased an ice cream maker and we had made some delicious ice cream together. Well, I began, I don't know what's wrong, but it had been churning for 3.5 hours and it's still soup. Without skipping a beat, he said, you can always serve milkshakes.
Oh my gosh.
I had to laugh and shake my head. Milkshakes indeed. He didn't ask if I had used enough ice. He didn't ask if I had changed the recipe. He didn't ask if I had used the right rock salt. He just made a helpful suggestion on how to use what I had to its best advantage. That was his gift to see the possibilities, to assess right then and there whatever was at hand, an issue, a person, even though a critique may be in order, moving forward with a constructive approach was always Dad's lead. Seek the possibilities within the parameters of the present. Dad taught us with his milkshake method of looking at life.
That's beautiful.
And then the question, how about you? How could you use the milkshake method in dealing with a disappointing situation?
That's beautiful. I love that. Your father sounds absolutely wonderful.
Oh, he was great, and part of my foundation, I think they were very positive people. And so it's just kind of natural for me, which I'm very grateful for.
What a blessing for all that you've been through. That positivity that was implanted in you early on has gotten you through a lot. It's amazing. Bless him. And your mom. Uh, this is a perfect time to ask you, do you have a message to pass on to readers who are dealing with tragedy to help them overcome it, to find the inner resilience that resides in them?
At some level, we got to decide, we have to refine what we believe. And for me, I believe life can be good no matter what. But the operative word in that is can. It can be good no matter what, not it is good. So can implies work. You have to commit yourself to, I want life to be good. What can I do to make sure that I'm moving in that direction? And for me, I have little techniques, even though blank, I'm paralyzed, I can still write, even though I can still, and that kind of jump starts yourself into a positive frame of mind. And sometimes when I'm making my gratitude list every day, it's hard to think about big things that I'm grateful for when so many bad things are pressing in. So I just make it small and look for the things that are better. What was better about today than yesterday? And usually you can find at least one or two things that are at least better.
You know what I hear when you talk? I hear you saying, I hear you that you're reaching actually for self-love instead of self-pity.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, yes.
I mean, it's not that you're not going through a lot, but your mindset is how do I, in respecting and loving myself with all that I'm going through, why do I need to put more on myself? I'm going through a really great deal. How can I reach to find that silver lining around something and all of that, where other people they go to the pity pot and they stay there forever. And you're like, I don't like the atmosphere in that pot. I'm getting out of there. I'm pulling myself out of that boiling water. But and then also you've written that there's a cost to hope. What does that mean to you?
I think you have to be careful with hope. I think that hope, if you have unrealistic hopes, then you're disappointed a lot. I think hope needs to be grounded in reality. One of the things that a therapist told me when my son presented with seizures and I didn't know what to hope for, do I hope that he grows out of them? That was an option. Do I resign myself that he may not? And she said, why don't you pursue parallel paths? I'm like, what do you mean parallel paths? And he said, well, on the hopeful path, you can think that he will grow out of them and envision life that way and maybe work toward that goal and whatever that would mean for you practically. But on the perhaps reality path or the other path, that he will not outgrow these seizures. So I like that parallel path concept because it let me move even in two directions, but still I was living. I wasn't stuck. And I think that's just where a lot of the pain comes in, is when you find yourself stuck with ambiguity, with uncertainty. You're not sure, and I used it for myself. Was I going to walk again or not? There was 33% don't walk after transverse myelitis, but the other 2/3 do. In some way, they recover. So I had 2 years of uncertainty about that. I was patient with my marriage. Am I gonna resolve it or not? It took me 3 years to get through that. But these parallel paths kept me moving through very challenging times.
Becky, if you could go back knowing who you are now with all that you've learned and all this wisdom you've accumulated, would you change anything? What would you change?
I think I would hold life more lightly instead of so tightly, because I think I really was just white knuckling through every one of these, and I couldn't see clearly what was ahead. And it was a lot of stress, it was a lot of,
Understatement.
yeah, and just and to have more confidence that things are going to be okay. And I think the older I get, the more evidence I have that it is going to be okay. I look back on all these challenges and like, can I do something new? Well, look back at the evidence. Things have worked out, not necessarily the way I planned, that's for darn sure, but they've worked out. So I think that sometimes our history of overcoming things can be a powerful foundation for confidence for what's ahead. And don't be afraid to look back and focus on that, major on that as you look forward.
Good advice. And I know you have a special promo for our audience, which I think has such value. Could you tell us about 7 strategies? And we're going to provide the link for this in our show notes, everyone. So 7 strategies for staying up when life is pulling you down.
And they're simple. They're very simple things. I won't tell you all what they are so that you can sign up and get them. But they're just simple techniques that I use almost every day just to try to stay up, and staying up is hard. It can be hard work, but it's so worth it.
So worth it. Becky, what is your message about the importance of healing that you'd like to share with everyone? Why should they all get off their duffs and heal their stuff, as painful as that is?
The name of my first book was Rethinking Possible. And I think when you really break rethinking possible down, it is positive driven. It is open to whatever life can be if you apply your skills to looking for those possibilities. So I would say that's the key thing, and why it's worth healing is there's possibilities out there for you. You just have to take the time to discern those and to investigate those and approach it as an adventure. Really, because you don't know. I mean, our plans get sideways all the time. So why not trying to create some new ones and see? It's like the spaghetti thing on the refrigerator. Throw it up there, see what sticks, see what sparks joy for you. It could be very unexpected. I had no idea I would be a writer. That was not in my plan at all. But it's brought me such joy and, more importantly, connection to others. And I think that's what brings me the most joy, is being able to connect with others and share life.
Right? Would you say that when you heal, it gives you an ability to have more joy in your life?
Yes, absolutely. It's we all have scars, and I think that that's the part that, they don't disappear. These wounds don't disappear, but it's important to heal and heal in a healthy way so that we can continue to grow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. This is a wonderful interview, and I really appreciate it, Becky. And I really want to read this inspiring quote from your new book, Morning Fuel, which is a wonderful, inspiring book for all of our listeners to keep by their bedsides. Every day, I try to give those things I love now an extra measure of attention, letting them grow and root out any emptiness that I may feel. From the first sip of my morning coffee to the evening's final snuggle from my aging, puggy trip, I'm determined to cherish today's loves a little more so that what's tangible, present, and available now can lift my spirits. Love what you love now. Becky, thank you so much for opening your heart and offering such an uplifting response to the profound question at the center of your life. What happens when loss after loss arrives and you still choose hope? Your story invites us to reconsider what's possible when life changes forever and to see resilience in an entirely new light. Thank you for this perspective-shifting, wise, and deeply empowering conversation. And from my heart, I wish you abundant blessings always.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you today.
Thank you, Becky. As I like to say, to be continued. Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at griefandrebirth.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel at Healing from Grief and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to www.amazon.com/shop/Irene S. Weinberg to check them out. And to my cherished Grief and Rebirth podcast fans, stay tuned and see you again soon.